Hey, how's it going? Today I'm talking about the real reason you're still slow, and it's not what you think.
This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone RunDisney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line.
If you feel like you are so incredibly slow, you're worried that you are going to get swept by the balloon ladies because you're starting in the last corral and there's no way you can stay ahead of them, this episode is for you. I recently polled my Instagram audience to ask, what do you want to hear about in April? And it was a resounding get faster, speed work related things, pacing related things. So that's what we're talking about the majority of April. This first episode is all about the real reason you're still slow to set us up for getting faster. So this is going to be a bit of some harsh truth. Okay? Please know I am holding your hand when I say this. I am saying it with love. It needs to be said because if you don't stop doing the thing that's keeping you slow, you will never get faster. You actually will just get slower. Okay? So please, I'm saying this information with all of the love in my heart. The reason you're still slow is because you are trying to push the limits every time you run. There is a long pause in there. I want you to take that in. The real reason you're still slow is because you are trying to push the limits every time you run. You need to slow down on the majority of your running. Now, when I say the majority of your running, I do not mean 4 out of 5 runs. I'm talking timing. So, with the training plans that I create, that means your long run is slow. Because the way the training plans I create, whether it's free or for my one-on-one clients or my clients in Stronger, Faster, Finisher, I use the same concept, just more tailored, slightly different depending on where we're working together. So the long run is your long run. It is the longest run of the week. That's where you need to go slow. And then the other workouts, which if you're following my training plans, you're either doing 2 or 3 other runs in the week. If we're working one-on-one together, I have a client who wants to do the majority of her training on the elliptical, and we make that work. So she may not have the same number of runs as what I'm discussing here, but for my free training plans, it's going to be 2 other runs if you're doing a half marathon. It's going to be 2 or 3 other runs if you're doing a 2-course or the Springtime Surprise 3-course challenge. And then if you're doing marathon, goofy, or dopey, depending on which week you're training in, you may have 4 runs that week. You may have 5 runs that week, depending on how it's worked out. But in general, let's just say we're running 3 days a week just for conversation's sake for this podcast episode. You need to make your long run slow and easy. The slower, the better. If you are running your long run at the same pace you're running your 30 or 45-minute quote unquote maintenance run during the week. And I use quotes on that because I don't call them maintenance runs. That's what somebody else in runDisney calls them. So I'm using that term because the majority of my listeners, they recognize that term. I actually call them speed workouts because that's what you should be doing. That is where you get faster. You should be doing 2 or 3 of those. Like I said, depending on what race distance you're running, the longer the race distance, the more workouts you have in a week. I'm training for Chills and Thrills right now. That's the 2-course challenge at Disneyland, the 10K and the half marathon that will be in September 2025. So I have my long run on Sunday, sometimes Monday. I prefer it to actually be Monday, but so let's just call it Sunday because that's how I have it mapped out on the free training plans I have. Sunday's the long run, Tuesday is a speed workout, and Thursday's a speed workout. If you aim to run the same pace or have the same goal for all 3 of those runs, you're destroying your chances of ever running faster. If you're listening to this podcast, you are not an elite athlete. You are not aiming for a sub 145 half marathon. You're not even aiming for a sub 2-hour half marathon. You're not aiming for a sub 3-hour full marathon. You're looking to cross the finish line. Maybe it's because you're injury prone. Maybe it's because you've had minor injuries. Maybe it's because you're just slow back of the packer. Maybe it's because you're new to running. Whatever the reason you're listening to this podcast episode, this podcast in general, thank you so much for listening. I love having you here. But you're not looking for those super speedy races. You're looking to cross the finish line, not get swept. Maybe have some time for a castle photo or a character stop. But you're looking at the marathons that are 7-hour cutoff and hoping that you'll do 6 hours or 5 hours. You're looking for the half marathon, 3.5-hour half marathon cutoff, hoping to get 3 hours or something along those lines. So that's who I'm speaking to. If you're looking for a sub 3-hour marathon, please contact me directly. This episode is not for you. So if you are aiming to run, if your goal for every run from the get-go, every run, training run, I'm not talking race, I'm talking training run, is the same, I want to get faster, I want to PR. If that's the goal every time you set out to run, you are destroying your chances of ever having that happen. You need to be strategic about it. Remember, I say this with love, okay? You need to strategize. That's why my training plans are set up the way they are. Long and slow, short and fast. Because you're burning out, you're using up all of your energy every time you do that. And so what happens is you end up doing really well for like a month, maybe 6 weeks, as long as the weather is nice. Because again, heat is going to play a factor. Dehydration is going to play a factor. What you ate is going to play a factor. What you did yesterday and the day before is going to play a factor. But let's say all of those other things are hunky-dory and go great. They are ideal conditions. When you aim to run the same pace or try and PR and get faster every time, it goes fine for a month or 6 weeks. And then shit hits the fan and you get slower and you get hurt. Then you're not motivated. You just don't want to do it. I'm so tired today. Can I skip it? Sure, you can skip it. But that feeling, that's not because you're lazy or lack motivation. That's because you're burning yourself out. you're overcooking. So, a good analogy to trying to PR, trying to run faster and faster, or even just aiming for the same pace, trying to keep a 13-minute per mile pace every time you run. And I think we can all agree that's not a quote unquote fast time, right? 13-minute per mile. Maybe it's faster than some of your other paces. But when we see other people talk about fast run, they're like, oh, yeah, 7 minutes per mile. That's what I'm doing. And I'm like, holy cow, that is like way faster than me. But let's just say, for conversation's sake, you're trying to get that 13-minute per mile race pace. So you aim to do that every time you run. You're not going to get it. Slow down. You're overcooking yourself. The comparison I like to do is baking. Now, if you've listened to this episode, if you've listened to this podcast or followed me on Instagram, I don't like cooking. I don't like baking. I have to do it to eat, right? We need to cook, we need to bake, whatever. But mainly I need to do it because my husband, there's only a handful of things that he can eat. He has food allergies, he has celiac disease, and then he has food sensitivities. And with his autoimmune condition, those sensitivities range wildly different and they change. And so, one thing that he can't have is gluten-free bread, even though he's celiac, because he has these other food sensitivities. And a lot of the gluten-free breads have these other additives in them. So I bake bread. I never even really baked cakes before. And now here I am making bread every couple of weeks. I make 2 loaves. Each loaf is 13 or 14 slices. So that's like a month's worth of bread. But I've gotten really good at it. But if I'm baking bread, his bread bakes at 425 for an hour and a half. After an hour, I need to take it out of the pan and then I put it right back on the rack directly for another 30 minutes. If I were to bake cookies, I'd put them on the cookie sheet at what, 350? I don't know. I don't bake cookies. We don't eat cookies very much. But if I baked something else, it's going to be at 500. If I set out and baked everything, the bread, the cookies, the pizza, the cake at 500 degrees, I would overcook everything. Excuse me, I would not overcook everything. I would overcook the majority of things because I can't even think off the top of my head what bakes at 500 degrees. So I would burn the outside of all of those, but the inside still wouldn't be baked. It wouldn't be done. We need to have the right temperature for the right amount of time, depending on what we're making. Same thing with running. If 500 degrees is our 13-minute per mile fast pace, every time we run, we are going to overcook ourselves. So we need to be strategic about it. So when you're looking to get faster, stop trying to go so fast so often. Stay tuned for the next episode where I'm going to tell you what to actually do to make your easy pace faster, better, and easier. Hey, can I ask a quick favor? If you're enjoying this podcast, would you take 20 seconds to leave a rating and review? Leaving a rating and a review helps other runners find this podcast because the platform you're listening to this on will start suggesting it to runners like you. All it takes is 20 seconds. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. As always, thanks so much for listening. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.